Welcome to This Week in Indies, our last show for April. Who are you? A great song from a classic band, and a question your fans might ask. How do you determine which face is your public face? How much of your inner light shows through to the masses? Do you have a concrete plan for your social media, or do you just kind of wing it? What kind of image do you want to present to the readers? Then, C.L. Cannon will be along with a selection of indie books you may like if you are a fan of The God of Endings by Jacqueline Holland. Finally, we test our panelists on this week's 10 questions. Can we learn any secrets as we make our way through the grind of sharp queries? Now put your best face forward, because it's time for another cunning episode of This Week in Indies with your host, S.M. Hillman. Welcome to This Week in Indies, everybody. I, S.M. Hillman, am going to take us on into a conversation about public faces that authors show. You may recognize me as the host of Zero Means You're Dead and the occasional game master for Hit the Dice here on the Go Indie Now Network. We'll talk more about those and other shows on the Go Indie Now Network later today, or later at the end of the day. I want to thank you for joining us live, or if you're viewing this on your Pip-Boy, after rating the local convenience store, please leave a like, leave a comment, go ahead and subscribe. We appreciate all the interactions we have with our audience. So before we dive into our conversation today, let me go ahead and have our panelists introduce themselves. Let's go ahead and start with Juliet.
Hey everyone, I am Juliet Rose. I am a cross-genre author of 10 current novels and also a publisher. My publishing company is Above the Rain Collective, and we have our first anthology coming out next month, which I have been working on before I came in, and I'll be working on as soon as I leave. I have a website, authorjulietrose.com. We also have abovetherain.com, and I'm also the host for First Time for Everything on Monday nights for the Go Indie Now Network. So tune in for that as well.
C.L.
Hey, I am Courtney, aka C.L. Cannon. I do a lot of things here on Go Indie Now, like the monthly marketing tip and the Indie Connection. I also own Fiction Atlas Press, where I help authors by publishing them, but also by helping them market. So this is a great topic for me today. And I also, in between all of that stuff, sometimes write fantasy and sci-fi.
Janet?
Hi, I'm Janet Pollack. I am a nonfiction author. I am an executive coach and do leadership development and senior executive team development. And I write about leadership effectiveness. I got my underpinnings in leadership in the United States Marine Corps. And so I help leaders be truly effective as they move up through the ranks, mostly in for-profit organizations, but also in nonprofit organizations.
Thank you all for being here today. Let's go ahead and I just wanted to start off. Can you talk about the process of choosing your public persona? How did you come to that conclusion of what you wanted to be? And is the public you significantly different than the quote unquote real you? Janet, could you start us off?
Sure. So as you can see from the shirt that I'm wearing, I'm about color and prints, and that is part of who I am. My glasses are red, and that's very purposeful. So when I have pictures of myself taken, when I show up to either speaking events or facilitating workshop, I'm usually a fairly brightly colored person at the front of the room. And one of my taglines is fun. So I try to make learning fun all the time. And so you will see that in my posts and in the work that I do. And so I think I lead with that. How do we engage excitedly in being more effective leaders? And so that's kind of the key. I think that's one of the key brand statements that I have.
Excellent. What was the process that you got to make that particular choice, or where did you come up with that?
Yeah, I think it evolves. You know, if you think about my first professional role was in the United States Marine Corps, it's a lot different than how I am now. I was an officer, but everything in the Marines is very regimented, and how you wear your hair and how you address other people and everything about it. And so when I left the Marine Corps, I was able to literally let my hair down and be more of who I am. I was trained as a primary school teacher in college many years ago. And so I think, you at this point in my career, and for all of us, we move into what works for us and what we really feel comfortable. When I talk to people about starting their own firm, for example, and they ask me about rates, I say, it's whatever you can say comfortably. It's not here, it's not there, it's what works for you. And I think your public persona is the same way.
CL?
I am just a huge nerd, as you can see from all the stuff behind me, and I let that nerdiness come out because there's no other way for me to be. I'm an INFJ, so to be inauthentic, it feels kind of skeezy to me. I can't stand to not show exactly who I am, I guess, and small talk, all that stuff, just it doesn't work for me. So I just kind of just put myself out there, and everything I believe, everything I'm a fan of, I just, there's really no filter. I don't have a filter. and it has worked positively for me, I guess, because we see mostly in marketing, the more genuine you are with people, the more they respond to you, the more that they can feel like they know you and that they can trust you. So it's worked for me, and it's no extra work, so it's great.
So you bring up trust. I think that's not something I necessarily had thought about, but it's important for the people who are interacting with you to trust you, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Why would they buy something from you or take any advice from you if they can't trust you and that you can't prove to them that you are being real and genuine with your advice or with the things that you are doing in the public? So,
Juliet?
Yeah, I think I'm a little different because I'm really a committed introvert. I'm always happier behind the scenes instead of in front of things. So when I first started having to really interact with like the public, so my public persona, that was a challenge at first. I felt awkward. I didn't know what to do. And so what I did was, years ago, I was an actress. And so I kind of took that idea into what I was doing, and I worked out scripts initially to like, how would I initially connect? Once I initially connect and we start the conversation, it's natural and I can be really genuine. But for me, I really had to find a way to connect with people continually without it being awkward. And initially it was awkward because I didn't know how to do it. So those scripts really helped me make those connections. And now that it's been a while that I've done that, I've kind of moved away from it a little bit because now I feel more comfortable in that environment.
Right. I use when I'm doing hosting, I always use scripts to kind of smooth through the transition into whatever it is we're talking about. So now that you have an idea, you have who you are, you put that out there. How do you go about using, or what techniques and best practices do you go about using to build a rapport with the public? Juliet, we can start with you.
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to what I was saying is, I think about what I want to see or what I want to have as on the other side of the table. So as a reader, as a consumer, I want, when I go up to an author's table, what is it that makes me comfortable? What is it that makes me feel connected? And I really take that advice. So at cons, I always go up and talk to other authors, and I kind of get a feel for things by doing that. Like, what is it that basically makes me feel comfortable on that side of the table? And I make sure then when I'm on the other side of the table as an author that I'm giving that to the reader or to the consumer.
Right. CL?
I think pretty similarly to Juliet, I just try to make my space comfortable for them, and I try to think of how I would want to interact with people. I think I can't really think of anything more perfect than that, is, to make them feel comfortable with you and to be able to give them things that they would relate to. I think usually in comedy, a lot of times that's been shown in several different marketing studies that comedy gets you better results. So being funny, being kind of, dorky sometimes works for me. And that's my natural state, so it's easy for me to do.
So what do you have a certain kind of comedy that you think works best for you, or like self-deprecating humor, or
Self-deprecating definitely works a lot, and using memes works a lot. Things that you wouldn't think is really that much marketing, just having fun. Sometimes I do like a lot of polls and things where I just use like silly gifs or something, like in my either online on like social media or on in my newsletter, and people actually really respond to that a lot better than if you were just going to throw up, this is my book, this is what I have on sale this week. So if you're involving them and making that connection with them, then they're more likely to remember you and go, oh yeah, I remember that funny joke she made, or I remember those memes that she posted, that was funny. And they'll come back for that content and hopefully buy your book too.
Janet?
I think what we're all saying is it's about customer intimacy. If we go back to a model that was introduced about 20 years ago, there are so many marketers I'm finding on LinkedIn that says, we'll get you lead generation and, 5 new clients a month and so forth. And I've tried those schemes and they just don't work. And I don't think they work because when people hire an executive coach, it's really about who you are and what background you represent and what experience do you have. And so a lot of that either comes from a personal relationship, maybe you meet someone at a conference, occasionally through a video that you publish, but also by just reinforcing the communications that you have with people and asking for referrals. Who else do you know who has this situation that you're exploring or experiencing? Who else might I talk to? And I think the world of publishing is very much that way, that it's not about blasts. It's not about, large volume stuff. It's really about creating connections, as we've been saying, one person at a time.
So that's really fascinating. You don't often think of intimacy in that regard, but it really is an intimate relationship you have with the people who are reading your books or taking your classes or you're working one-on-one with, right? Courtney, you find that true too? Because I know you do a lot of marketing and help people in that regard.
I do a lot more group marketing than I do one-on-one marketing, but I do find that is true. Getting with the person and finding out exactly who they are and not just who they are, but how they want to represent themselves also, because, they're not always as carefree as I am with just letting my geek flag fly, but they want to, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Sorry. The ADHD is taking over. But being able to customize for each client and have them project who they want to be or who they are onto their audience and connect with them in the way that they want to connect with them. So when you're working with them as a client, you kind of have to get to know them and get to know their process before you can say, okay, this is what I think will work for you and this is what I think will work for your audience. Because one of the biggest things about marketing also is identifying your target audience and knowing what they like too. So making that connection is also really important.
This wasn't a planned question, but just sort of bringing it up. Did any of you have a particular mentor who helped you with your marketing, with marketing yourself and things like that? Juliet, did you have someone or?
No, but I'm an observer. I spend my life just observing things. So even looking on social media, or like I said, being at events, I always watch what other authors are doing or what people are doing, and I learn as much what not to do from that as I learn as what to do from that. So like sometimes I would see somebody do something and I would see the customer cringe, don't do that. So that's really instead of having a mentor, everybody's kind of my mentor because I'm always kind of watching to see what does and doesn't work, what I would be comfortable with, because obviously I'm not going to do certain things that do work for other authors simply because it's not my personality and it would probably come back across as pretty awkward. So it's a lot of just observing.
Janet or CL, did you all have a mentor or someone you followed?
I'm not as much of a mentor, but I am comfortable asking other people for advice. About 5 years ago, I had a real breakthrough. People said, oh, you should meet so-and-so executive coach or someone else executive coach. And I thought, why would I want to meet with them? I compete with them. But I had a real breakthrough when I discovered that when I meet with them, I'm asking them, what works around marketing? how is business? What's, is there a hot part of the world that you're doing a lot of consulting in? The first couple of months of 2024 was really slow. I think everybody's really cautious about what the economy is going to do. Interest rates are high. Even organizations weren't hiring a lot. But by talking to other people in my own space, it was really reassuring to find out, oh, wow, you're having a hard time closing deals as well. You're having a hard time of finding new business. Things have picked up, and then you get a chance to share that as well. And I think that helps us all be better marketers.
Sia?
I think I'm more like Juliet. I've kind of picked things from everywhere. I also observe people a lot. I also hyper focus a lot on certain subjects. So I will just kind of find something that I want to learn about and just read everything out there and sort of absorb what I think works the best, especially from what I've seen other authors use. I do things like follow other really popular authors in my genre. And see, what seems to be working for them. That really, I'll be like, well, okay, that post really worked. This post really didn't. And I think my audience would maybe respond to that. So I'll try it. So there is also a lot of kind of trial and error. But for the most part, it's just kind of taking in what everyone is doing, processing it somewhere up there and going, okay, this is what I'm going to try. And using data, especially like in my newsletters, I use a lot of things that seem fun, well, they are fun, but things that are meant to be fun. And then I use the polls that I get or the questions that I ask in my data, because I will put that on a spreadsheet because I'm a spreadsheet freak. And I'll say, well, my audience for my newsletter liked this. So I can either write that into a story later, or I can use it in some sort of promotion later. And so gathering data that way has really helped me too.
Awesome. We've mentioned authenticity, and I think I know the answer to that, but I'll just throw it out there again. How important is being authentic to building that rapport? And what does authenticity mean to you? Just throw it out there to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's 100% what you need to do, because people can see through what's not authentic. And ultimately, it's more important to build a relationship than to make a sale. So I think that's where authenticity comes in, because when somebody is coming to you or you're interacting with them, your goal shouldn't be, let me get a book in their hands, as much as it should be, let me start to build a relationship with this person long-term, because that will help, of course, long-term your sales, but also word of mouth and just that relationship that you formed. So I think that, no matter how tempting it is to kind of put on the showman's hat and do a little dance to try to get people to buy things, they might buy it and they might walk away and not feel good about that relationship. And that's really where you fail, because they've got to feel good about the relationship in order to care about what you do.
Wow, Juliet, that was so well said. I don't think you could have articulated it any clearer. The only thing I'd add onto what you said is, you may not make a sale today, but you might make a sale in a year or even in 2 years. I'm doing executive coaching work with leaders that I worked with 10 years ago, have a new job now, and they're like, oh my gosh, this place is chaos. Janet, can you help me? So I think not only establishing those relationships, but then just every once in a while, maybe it's every 6 months, maybe it's every year, maybe it's every 18 months, just reach back out to them. Remember a piece of information that you knew they were, maybe they had a kid going off to college, and you reflect on that. So some piece that you reconnect with that, again, may not result in an immediate sale, but you now are more top of mind than you were before the call or the interaction.
Sia, any thoughts?
I don't really have anything to add to that. They both said it beautifully. That's exactly, being authentic and developing that relationship long term is eventually going to either get you a sale from that person, or they're going to eventually share something from you, or they are going to read something. Maybe it's a free magnet or something, but they'll like it and maybe they'll tell their friend. So it's all about word of mouth and kind of spreading that authenticity out, because you've really had made a good impression on someone and they felt like they should share that with someone else.
Again, getting back into creating those intimate relationships with potential fans who, could down the road be, create commerce for you. Let's skip this one for now. What are some of the soft skills that you show off to people publicly? Like, some people are knitters, some people are also artists, that sort of thing. What sort of soft skills do you, if any, like, I'm a gamer. Everybody knows I'm a gamer. I talk about gaming a lot. I'm going to talk about gaming later. So what are those other skills that you show off that you think help build that rapport?
I think soft skills, as far as being who you are, like, I'm pretty open. I always say I wear my heart on my sleeves, So, like, if I'm posting about something, I'm not just posting about my books. I'm talking about my life, who I am, my interests. I talk a little bit about my family. I don't put them too much on show just because this is my deal, not theirs. So I try to keep that, limited. But I do really try to, again, it comes to connection, and that's the soft skill, is like we're still trying to connect with people, and whether or not they're buying our books or not, it doesn't matter. What we're trying to do is form connections. And so by kind of showing who you are, and showing your interest. So if you do crochet, that's interesting. Even if you write books, people are still interested to know that you crochet, or like we rescue dogs, like it's things that people say, oh, they're more than just this person that wrote a book or trying to sell me something. They're actually somebody that I might like outside, I might like to get to know. And I think that's really important in just social media, especially, because I think we've all seen the person that just shares their book after their book after their book after their book. And for long, you're like, I gotta hide them. I have to, like, because I don't know them, right? They're just this book, really. And so I think connecting and showing that part of yourself is really important.
I think that's really interesting what you're saying about them sharing and sharing and sharing and hiding them, or sometimes we'll unfriend them or whatever, but after a while they kind of feel like a bot. Like, they don't even register as human to you because they're not making any human interactions with you.
Yes.
So that was my observation about that, I guess. Sorry, I got the brain fog bad.
SM, I do love this idea, though, of a point of connection. Yes, it's authentic, and it's more talking about, I guess we're talking about life than, my book and how do I sell it. I often weave golf into my conversations. I'm a real avid golfer, and I get right now in my life to play quite a bit of it. I do find it's a way to connect with men, particularly because a lot of men do golf. I'm not a real big sports person. Like, I don't know football players and all of that and who's on top during the season, or basketball, or even baseball. And so finding a way to connect into your various audiences, I think, is really important. I may not, when I'm speaking with a women's audience, I may not talk as much about golf because there just aren't as many women golfers as men, but I might talk about the fact that I'm a knitter, or that I'm an artist, or something else that's kind of interesting to that particular audience.
Jen, too, you're part of a greater organization, once a Marine, always a Marine, right? How has that been, or has that been something that you've been able to use to connect with people?
It has helped me a lot. Certainly it gave me my knowledge about what is leadership. I don't generally lead with the fact that I'm a Marine officer, but there's enough people that know that, and the person that hires me may add that. I think I work with a lot of men that kind of lead with that. Oh, and I'm also a Marine officer. And it just, I don't know, it just feels kind of funny. But I like to have it become as a surprise, because I don't fit generally the model of what we think of as a Marine. And I got to go through the Marine Corps at a time when everything changed for women in the Marine Corps. We finally moved into combat roles, and we finally got to fly helicopters. And so I also share what that transition was like, and what it was like to be like at one point I was on a base and there were only 2 women officers, period, on the entire base. And so, how do you feel? How do you settle into that kind of awkward situation and yet use it to your advantage?
Awesome. Sort of leading into that a little bit, is your public image political? And if not, why not? If so, why so? We don't have to talk about specific politics, but do you touch a little or a lot on current politics when interacting with your audience?
Okay, so I'll just answer. It's interesting because I try to keep my personal beliefs to a degree private. However, I also write books that talk about my personal beliefs. So it's kind of hard to talk about my books without talking about my personal politics, simply because it does weave into my story. So if I'm telling somebody about a book, it's going to naturally come up that I'm a certain way because that's in the book. However, I really try to keep my private life and my public persona separate. Like I said, kind of going back to my family and stuff like that, I like to have that separation simply because it allows me to step away. Plus, because I am an introvert and when I'm in the public eye, I have to be more extroverted, it wears me out. I get tired. So there's a point where I have to shut down and disappear to kind of regenerate that energy. And so I am who I am. I think if you meet me in person and you know me personally and you know me as a person that sells books, you're going to say that's Juliet. But there's an energy level that I definitely have to separate the two.
I definitely showcase all of my political beliefs. I've campaigned on my posts before on my social media, so I don't hide my political affiliation or my beliefs or anything like that at all. I do lots of fun political things, but for social justice things. So I'm kind of just all out there with it, and my reasoning is that if someone doesn't want to buy my book or work with me with my services or something, then they probably weren't a good fit for my books and the way that I do things in the first place. So, they can go on and do their own thing and I'll go on and do mine and we'll just go separate paths.
I stay away from it, but I think it naturally comes up. I don't, on my public professional persona, talk about, who's in what office and various social causes. But what we know from research about leaders is that highly effective leaders have a goodness to them. They have a caring about other people. They don't need to take up all the oxygen in the room, and they allow other people to express their points of view and their opinions. They, ask more questions than state more opinions. And so that in this day and age does have one kind of more leaning in this political sphere than the other. And so it softly comes up, I think, in my world rather than very deliberately.
Gotcha. We have a few comments here. AF Stewart saying hi. Hi, AF. Glad to see you. And Jenna, people love to buy things, but they hate to be sold. The relationship, the need fulfillment, and the authenticity are key. I think we would all agree with that. Excellent. Mm-hmm. Thank you all for comments. Keep them coming. Real quick, it doesn't have to be anything too in depth, but who is there someone you think does this really well that you enjoy either interacting or at least just seeing their public persona?
Joe.
That's what came to my mind too. I'm like, but I didn't want to.
Yes. Joe, I always love everything that he has. As far as marketing and who is doing it well, there are tons of people I follow on TikTok that are really shining examples, but for right now I cannot think of the name of any of them. I do know a few YouTubers that I have followed for years that I feel are doing good things for the author community, but I don't necessarily know how well they're doing on marketing their books. But a few people well, I know Joanna Pan is doing amazing at marketing her books, but she was one of the early people that I did follow and saw how she interacted with people, and I really liked that and kind of adopted that with the way that I interact with people. There's Jenna Moresi, who has some really wildly popular YouTube series about authors and how to be an author in different ways that you interact with people. And she uses comedy a lot. She's really hilarious, and I always love watching everything that she does. So there's tons of examples out there. I wish I had a list of all the people I follow on TikTok, because there's a few people that are just like, they just create magic every time that they're on the screen.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if you guys know Bobby Nash, but he's really good too. Because like when he markets, there's never a time that you feel like he's trying to sell you something. He just feels like he's connecting, and he's always really supportive of other authors as well. So like when he does post, you tend to like tune into it simply because he does it in a way that is very reachable and very friendly, and less buy my books.
I think some of the people that come to mind is number one would be Adam Grant. He's a professor at Wharton School and is just a voluminous writer. What I love about him is he's incredibly well researched. He's not very old. He's probably 40, and he's written more and published more than, I don't know, almost anybody. He's got 4 books at least out right now. And, you know, what he sells is information. He doesn't sell books. And the information that he quote unquote sells is around, human behavior, why we know this human behavior makes sense, or how does it make sense. And so then you kind of naturally buy his books or follow him on his podcast or what have you. He also has a really engaging, lighthearted spirit. On April 1st this year, I believe he has 4 books published. He said, he sent an email out that I've decided to produce 4 more books this year. And he took all 4 of his books and then renamed them. And like one is called Think Again, and I think the name was Stop Thinking. And there was another one about untalented people. And so he always puts that little bit of flavor in it. The other thing that he's talking about recently is when he was in high school and college, he was incredibly introverted. And he talks a lot about how he overcame that, not to become an extrovert, but to be in really, really large audiences and be effective. And a lot of it was trial and error. A lot of it was practice and some coaching. And so I think he's a really great testament to all of us who aren't comfortable on the stage, aren't comfortable with a public persona, and how do you inch towards that comfort?
Excellent. A.F. Stewart, the author Derek Bourne comes to mind. I love his TikTok marketing. We'll get back to TikTok later. Much later. So as our panel refreshes themselves a little bit, let's travel time for a moment to hear from the past CL Canon with the Indie Connection. Hold on. There we go. With the Indie Connection. Here we go.
Hey guys, CL Canon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. Today I'd like to tell you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Jacqueline Holland's The God of Endings. The first book I have for you is called Bloodborne by Stephanie Kelmer. As the descendant of a centuries-old cult, Nina Coffin was never promised an ordinary life. The only things that kept her alive are drinking from open veins and keeping secrets. But truth stripped from her lips like blood, and trust is a dangerous thing. Will falling in love with a man with killer instincts, being hunted by an ex-girlfriend with fangs, and a perilous accident threaten the peaceful life she built after years of turmoil? It will take a fight with her inner demons and the sacrifice of the ones who love her most to learn how strong she really is. Mina's journey is a long and gory one, but it's worth it, even if she needs a few daggers and a lot of blood to find out. The second book I have for you is called Nocturne Resurrection by Glenn Tinsley. London, 1802. Body snatchers and murderers take the dead from the cold earth. A fetid surgeon fights for justice, and a beautiful vampire brings a terror of her own design. In 19th century London, a mysterious young woman denies the horrors of superstition and mortality. Only she's not as young as she seems. Born in Anglo-Saxon England, Evelinda Grey absorbs the essence of a race of long-dead blood drinkers. Practically immortal and with superhuman capabilities, after 8 centuries of grief and loss, the beautiful vampire engages the attention of a shy yet brilliant physician in a desire to understand her place in the world. Through subterfuge and intrigue, Eve places herself near the distinguished surgeon James Dalton, finding herself drawn into the nightmare world of body snatchers and murderers that keep the autonomous of London supplied with bodies. The resurrection men are the true power in the London underworld, and none may stand against them. No one, however, would believe that the pale young woman with gleaming eyes is the most dangerous thing on London's streets. And as the number of dead begins to rise, so does her thirst. The third book I have for you is from our very own J.D. Estrada. It's his only human book from the Human Cycle. Nathaniel Reynolds isn't a fan of life. He isn't a fan of the news, which is a bust because he's a reporter. He's lost faith in journalism, in the truth, in civilization, and in himself. So it's quite a surprise when he gets swept up in a quest to save the world. Perception and reality collide as one man faces one question. Would you sacrifice your humanity to save mankind? Only Human is a tale where the truth is revealed about vampires and Therans, make sure you don't call them werewolves, about angels, about demons, the photogeni plant people, and humanity as we supposedly know it. This isn't your typical book. These aren't your typical vampires, and what has been said is fiction, may actually be truer than the history you've been sold. And the last book I have for you is called The Last Descendant by Christina Cairn. She's immune to every disease, but her curiosity may get her killed. Cambridge, England. American pathologist Dr. Abby Whitting longs to know why she never gets sick. The sole survivor of a horrific outbreak 2 decades ago, she's certain the answer must lie in her medical records, held under lock and key at a mysterious clinic. But standing in the way of her access to classified files is charismatic, centuries-old vampire. Tasked with replicating the secrets of the dying predator's blood, he proposes an uneasy alliance in exchange for her documents. But her research soon sends her down a path strewn with murderous clinicians, a vengeful detective, and an obsessed rival in search of fresh souls. And even worse, her shocking findings reveal a disturbingly outrageous truth. Can Abby discover the secret to her own strange gift without losing her soul? Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
CL, thank you so much for bringing the Indie Connection to us every week. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Here's a fun. Well, I hope it's a fun one. Have you ever made a faux pas in public? Anything from like, oh no, I misspelled have, which I've done a couple times, or maybe said something that you turned out not to be true, or something like that. Just some mistake that you made in public, and how did you handle that if you did? You don't have to give too many details. So.
Oh, I will go, I guess. I was on a panel last year at Imaginarium. This was my first really big panel. It was my first really big con, and there were like some of my favorite authors were right beside me, and I was kind of freaking out and fangirling a little bit. And they had like the water up there, and you're supposed to pour your own water. I let the author beside me pour my water. She was like going to hand me the water cup, and I was like a 5-year-old or something, and let her pour water for me. And I was like devastated after that, because I the whole time on the panel I was like, why did I do that? And I apologized later, but she was like, oh, it was okay and everything. I was just so nervous, and I didn't know what to do. And then through the whole panel, I was just kind of mortified and wasn't on my game to be able to do it, to answer the questions, because I was just thinking about how embarrassing that was. Thankfully, it was not televised, so or recorded or posted anywhere. But
understood. I get nervous on panels too.
It was so awkward.
I think anytime you make a mistake, it feels awkward, but the audience is often with you. I've made many mistakes, sometimes typos in my materials, even though I've looked them over 17 times. My husband has read them twice. There still will be a misspelling or the word on instead of one, just simple things like that. And your written work often speaks for yourself. And so there you can take it as an element of quality. But I tend to just laugh at myself. Oh my gosh, look I don't even know how to spell the word one. And that helps, I think, put people a little bit more at ease. I guess that's kind of my strategy, is to try to laugh at myself or make fun of myself when errors do occur.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I'm like the queen of faux pas, so I can't like list every faux pas I ever do. I feel like every time I speak to somebody, there's a faux pas. But the one that I always think of that I do, and it's on both sides. So Juliet Rose is my name, but my married last name is different. So I've occasionally gone to sign a book and started to sign my married last name and have to figure out really quickly how to change an S into an R and like remake it work. But I've also done it with like, people that are buying the book, their name, even though they've told me their name, I know how to spell it. Somehow my brain just decides when I'm writing their name to just make something up. And so same thing, trying to sit there going like, okay, how do I now fix this like obvious way that I wasn't writing their name correctly to get it right? And most times I can do it because my handwriting's terrible anyway. It's not like they're getting a really clear version of their name, but I have occasionally had to set a book aside and then start over.
Yeah, that was
before.
That was my biggest in my first time I was signing books. That was my biggest fear. It's like, oh no, Dan. How do you spell Dan? It's simple, right? I might screw up Dan or Mike.
But I've literally messed up like names that every day, like Mike. All of a sudden it's Nike, and I like you just got to roll with it. I think same thing like Janet was saying. You have to laugh stuff off and not overthink it, because the overthinking is what usually buries us.
And it shows your audience that you're human also. And that's really important. Sometimes people put authors and people in the public image like on a pedestal, and we're just humans making all kinds of mistakes, just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. Let's talk a little bit about, go back to a little bit to that rapport and things like that. Do you handle, or do you use different techniques in person as opposed to online, like what we're doing now, or in your social media posts, versus being there in person with people and meeting and like that? What are some of the differences there?
I think for me in person, I tend to still be behind a veil a little bit, and that's just my social awkwardness. I think online I'm really comfortable because, you have that kind of wall between you. And so I'm a lot more like open about me and things like that online, where in person I tend to, I think, be more like that scripted, unless I get to know somebody. Like if I'm talking to a reader for a while, I'll usually open up and I become more like who I am behind the screen, but it takes a little bit for me to get there.
I think I'm more put together on, online and on social media and stuff than I am at a con where I'm really nervous, or where I'm just out in public in general, even in everyday life. I am very introverted in real life. When I get online, I feel like I can kind of, be more myself. And I live in a place that is a lot, not very many people like me are here. And so I've always kind of felt out of place my whole entire life. Mm-hmm. So online is where I found my community of people that I feel comfortable with. So in person, I'm very much, I faux pas much more, and I don't know what I'm saying much more than I do when I'm online, and, vibing with people that I know and that I care about. And not to say that I don't care about the people in public, but people that I feel close to, I guess.
The thing I'd add is, and what I tell a lot of people who are trying to build their network, or maybe they're looking for another job and they, are really uncomfortable going into a room that they don't know anybody. My advice always is ask the other person a question. Something very simple as, what brings you here tonight? Tell me about the work that you're doing. What did you find interesting about the speaker? If you can get them talking, you're nodding, you're engaging, and then you're eventually comfortable saying something or adding on. And I find that that is very, very helpful in broadening my network, particularly when you're live.
Awesome. Excellent. So before we finish up here, let's go ahead and hold on. We are going to ask our guests 10 questions. I promise none of them will be too crazy. Actually, I don't promise that. So first question. Do you remember the first time you figured out someone was using a pseudonym, either an actor, Cary Grant's not Cary Grant's real name, spoilers for everybody, or a writer, and how did you feel about that? What was your reaction to finding out that people use different names for their artist selves?
I think my first one was when I realized that Charlie Sheen and Martin Sheen weren't their names, because I'm Emilio Estevez, and I was like, wait, how is his last name Estevez and their Sheen? I don't think I really had a feeling either way. I figured they had a reason for it, but I thought it was odd that one of the family members didn't use, that pseudonym. So then it kind of gave away everybody else's name too. So, I don't use one. I semi do, because Rose is not my last name, but it's still a family name. So, but honestly, for me, I understand that people have their reasons for doing it. What I don't like is when people have multiple, so that I'm trying to keep track of all the different pseudonyms that they have for all the different things that they do. Then I get confused.
SM, my son is kind of going through this question right now. He is about 30 years old, and he's finally releasing his first album. And we've been talking about kind of what his stage name is. And we've been having really interesting conversations about, like, if you pick something so obscure to him, that then nobody really knows it's him, which they need to connect to him, the real person, in terms of, talks or sales or whatever. And so we've been kind of working with, like, does he go by Ben? Does he go by Benjamin? And is it just Benjamin or Benjamin Pollock, which is kind of long and hard to say. And so it's been just a fun discussion. I don't know where he'll end up, but it is, it's interesting to think about when you launch into a pseudonym, how does that happen?
I can't think of a particular time, like the first time that I realized, someone was using a pen name, but it doesn't particularly bother me. I shortened my name on here just because Courtney Cannon was so long on a title, and because I didn't like my original initial. My middle name is Danielle, and I didn't like CD Cannon. It just sounded like somebody like at one of those, like, I don't know, like events, like Summer Fest or something, launching out CDs with some sort of cannon. So I was like, no, that's not going to work. So I went with my maiden name, Little Ford. So I just went CL Cannon, and it works for me. And I just don't, I don't have any negative feelings about it. I don't like when people hide their identity and pretend to be someone else. That's happened a few times, and it's not been very great. But it just doesn't really have any problems for me with anybody doing a pseudonym.
Okay. Awesome. Simple one, or maybe not so simple. Do you TikTok, either as a watcher or as someone who as part of your marketing?
Occasionally on both. I'm not committed, like, either way. If I think of it, I'll try to sometimes do a reading, or I'll post if, like, I've won an award. I'll do something there, but it's not consistent. And I know that's a big faux pas right there, not being consistent. But TikTok's weird to me, so it's still something I'm warming up to.
I love TikTok. I'm on there a lot watching things, but I'm also not consistent with posting, because I run out of ideas, and they want you to post like 3 or 4 times. I just don't have time for that. I've got this business that I'm running. I've got authors that I'm working with. I've got 2 kids that I'm trying to keep alive and homeschool. And then I also teach at a co-op and all the other things in my life. I just don't have the time to consistently post like I need to. But I do tell my clients, you need to post consistently. So, do as I say, not as I do.
I'm so glad to hear the 2 of you in your response, because I'm not on TikTok at all. And I'm really not on a lot of social media. I'm not on Facebook, although I live vicariously through my husband. He'll let me know what's going on. I try to stay with LinkedIn, But like both of you have said, I run really hot and cold. I'll get really good on it for a couple of months, and then I get busy and I don't do it. I love the new feature on LinkedIn that allows you to pre calendar an announcement. So when I get on there, I'll do like every week for 5 or 6 weeks, and that helps me a little bit. But I too am not very consistent at it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm very old school. I like to do a blog, which I'm actually working on a blog post later. But I'm inconsistent with that as well. I used to be consistent, or by used to be, I mean, last year I was consistent with it, but this year it's fallen off already. So, okay. And it could be a peer, or it can just be one at random. A marketing scheme or campaign that you thought failed badly. Was like, oh no, this is terrible.
Oh, I think any of those, the reach outs on LinkedIn that says we're going to help you get 5 more clients this month. I did that during COVID. It was a little bit more unique then, but it just was a failure. I had a few nice conversations, and I think people only connected because they were lonely, which I guess was okay. But, there was absolutely nothing, nothing that came out of any of those. And so I just have to be really careful not to get caught up into one more scheme.
I would say, I guess this is more of a general thing, but likes for likes and follows for follows never actually work most of the time, especially if you're not very genre target with what the people who are following you and the people you are following. It's kind of tit for tat, and it's kind of canceling everything out. It doesn't really do you any good in the long terms. You want quality over quantity when it comes to your followers.
Yeah, I was say like the Butch book launch marketing you see a lot of times on different social media, or someone trying to like do a book launch and they almost never get anywhere, and then they're bummed about it. But I feel like there's no connection there. They're kind of just putting out a book launch, but they're not finding ways to connect with people to get them interested in that book launch. So like just that flat book launch that really goes nowhere.
Awesome. Okay. All right, the lightning round. Last 7 questions. Favorite music album. Let me try it again. Favorite music album.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. I'll start. I have to say the one my son is going to release in about 3 weeks.
Awesome.
I'm going to say Tom Petty, Damn the Torpedoes.
That's a good one.
I like so much music. This is such a hard question. I love, of course, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. That's like a given. But there's a lot of new music out that like I'll tune into. Like I really love the Black Pumas and I can't think of the album. I think it's Colors. I love that album. I listen to it over and over again. But I love music, so it's whatever kind of I hear recently and then listen
to. Motorcycle or fast car?
For me, fast car. I think motorcycles are death traps. So they're beautiful, but I feel like I'm just like. People die in them.
I'm going to have to say motorcycle because I grew up riding them with my dad, and he's a biker, and I don't know that I could still ride one now. He taught me how when I was a kid, but I haven't done it in a long time. I could probably still if I really tried, but yeah.
I guess I'd say fast car.
That's good. Cool. Favorite mode of transport, plane or train?
Oh, train. Like no question.
I've never been on either one except for like the train at Dollywood. So I don't know.
Dollywood train. Then,
I'm not going on the Dollywood train all the way like across the country, so I guess I'd say plane.
Okay, awesome. Do you have a favorite vacation spot?
I don't really take vacations because they're pricey, but like we like to go to the river near us. It's called Ravenscliff. Like it's just really peaceful and beautiful. So like we're going on my husband's birthday. So like when we have a day off, we're like, what do you want to do? It's always to go there and sit by the river. So that's my favorite.
I don't also don't take vacations very often. But I did really enjoy going to DC last year, and we're going to go again this year. And just seeing all the history there and walking around, and just such a big city, because I'd never been to such a big city before. And we actually figured out that we really liked it there. So I think so far from all the places I've been there, but I would like to kind of go abroad one day.
We have a cabin on a lake, and so anytime I get to spend there is just heavenly.
Awesome. Great. This is tough. I know it's kind of a tough one. I know for us fiction authors, do you read for pleasure?
Yeah, absolutely. I read both nonfiction and fiction for pleasure. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got over 1,000 books, so just like physical books. We're not even going to talk about all the other ones. So I'm always reading something. I usually go through at least 100 books a year. So.
Wow, good for you.
Jen?
Oh, yeah, both. And I do find I'm enjoying more and more my reading through an audiobook. I'll do it while I'm working out, while I'm having a bike ride. I just, and especially when it's when it's read by the author, there's just so much more richness, I think, to it, to hear that author's own voice.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Getting to the end here. Well, back to vacations, actually. Do you prefer to, admittedly, they're expensive, but do you prefer to go in winter or in summer, to travel in winter or summer? Is there a preference there?
Me,
Summer.
winter. Less people in the winter. I used to live on Tybee Beach, and I love the winters there because there was nobody there. So.
It depends for me where I'm going. If I'm going to a warmer location, definitely winter, because I've got a lot of chronic things, illnesses and things. So in the wintertime, it's really hard for me to get around. So if I'm going somewhere that's warm, it's going to actually feel better. So, but usually we do most of our traveling in the summertime. That's when I feel better. I feel more like going out and doing things. So.
Yep, makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Jen?
Summer. Yeah, summer. Hands down.
All right. Well, that's all the questions I have. Before we wrap things up, Janet, can you actually hold on? Before we do that, I want to talk about something that's coming up on Go Indie Now this week. We have a few shows coming up in the next couple of days. So let me go ahead and tell you all the good things. Monday at 7, we have First Time for Everything. Tomorrow at 8, speaking of Hit the Dice, I'll be running Hit the Dice tomorrow night at 8 p.m. here on the Go Indie Now. We'll be playing the indie RPG Mothership. It's science fiction horror. Thursday, we have Spotlight Spring series on the indie film Daruma at 8 p.m. And Friday, we have late night news at 10. And then Saturday we'll have our next episode of Zero Means You're Dead, and that'll be that's taped, and that will be coming up at noon. So, Janet, tell people where they can find you on the internet.
I am at janetpollock.com.
Awesome. Do you have anything new coming out soon, or anything people be aware of?
I do. Summer release of my second book, which the working title right now is The Strategic Leader's Mindset. It's not a competency-based book, but it's a book about how do you start thinking as a very senior leader rather than as a doer. Very excited about it.
Awesome. C.L. Cannon?
You can find me at the thing I can never point to this way at clcannon.net. I am on all social media as CL Cannon or CL Cannon author. I will be at Imaginarium Book Festival on June 9th and 10th in Washington, D.C. this year, and I'll tentatively be back the next year. And I also just signed up for an event in Roanoke in 2025. So I'm trying to kind of get out into the con scene more than I have been as some more stuff kind of comes closer to me. And yeah, find me on social media, I guess.
Juliet?
You can find me at authorjulietrose.com and our publishing at abovetherain.com. And then this coming weekend, I'm going to be at Atomicon in Charleston, South Carolina. And I'm on a panel with Grady Hendricks and John Hartness and B.L. Brown. So I'm super stoked about that. So if you get a chance, come on out for that.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us today. Please like and subscribe. Hit that like and subscribe button. And remember, it is always a good time to go indie now.